Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fran and Friends. For those of you that have not been keeping up with the podcast or are joining me for the first time, Fran and Friends, we talk about finding healing through self discovery. And we're usually on Friday, but we have shifted over to Saturday because life changes and nothing about it ever stays the same. The only thing that in life that is consistent is change. And here to help us talk about changes in life is Brianne Goldman. Hey, Brianne, welcome.
Hey there. Good to see you. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for accepting my last minute invitation, and your presence is really honored here. Yeah. So, for those of you that have not seen Brianne on the show before, I am going to provide you with a little bio, and then we're going to jump right into our conversation. All right. So Brianne is a yoga therapist and a holistic well-being educator. She specializes in supporting women to transform grief and challenging life transitions into confidence and creativity to reimagine possibilities. Experiencing her own grief, major weight loss. We got to talk about that, girl, because I'm in that space right now. Health challenges, multiple career pivots, and autism diagnosis at age 42, Brianne deeply understands the question, who am I? Her sacred work in the world is to know her own suffering so she can help you transform yours. If that introduction did not invite you to be more curious about the conversation, maybe this might be an episode for you to lean into. Brianne, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So we like to talk about transformation, and it is happening everywhere. And however you want to dive into the conversation, I am totally okay with it.
Yeah. I think I'll just jump right in and echo what you just shared about change is really the only constant, right? It's the only thing that we can rely on, and yet we fight so hard against change.
Yeah.
When the reality is everything is always in transition.
Hmm.
Always. Everything is always in transition, and the more that we fight that reality, the more we are setting ourselves up to suffer, right? And so when we tend to over-identify with things that by nature are inherently going to change, we are pretty much guaranteeing our own suffering. And I think it's such a life lesson. It's such a life lesson, and all we need to do is, step outside and be in the natural world for 5 seconds, right? And remind ourselves that everything is constantly changing and in flux.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, you already know in LA,
Mhm.
we have major things going on with. I think not just LA. I've seen like there's other spaces that are also experiencing some fires in their locations. Um, we collectively can do something together, but like individually, we have fires in our own lives that we may not have paid attention to. And help us to navigate what that looks like because your story like sounded like you shifted quite a bit having to move from
Yeah.
all the spaces that you've occupied, those obstacles, grief. I mean, how take us on your journey with you.
Yeah. What I would say, just to set that up, is I am not a special snowflake. I am not, this is not only unique to me. Like this is just inherent in being a human being and being embodied, right? But what I have really come to understand is embracing the concept of change and embracing the ability to move with life is can be such a skill and such a practice. Yeah. And untethering myself from, holding on, like white knuckling it, really gripping to not wanting to change. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, kind of what you alluded to is in my story. So I moved across the country years ago without a support network.
Mm,
And that was very destabilizing, but that was a choice, right? That was a change that I chose.
mhm,
I healthfully lost 80 pounds way back in the day, and that was a major change, right? That was a
mhm,
major shift, and I realized I had to make a change, even though it was uncomfortable and really confronting in so many ways in terms of how I was moving through the world, how I was seeing myself, how I was living with myself. I had to fundamentally change the relationship with myself.
mm.
So making very small incremental changes rather than say, I'm going to lose 80 pounds. That just seems way too up here, right? So I guess if I'm going to give a piece of advice, it would be break it down as small and as simple as you possibly can when you're making any sort of change, right? Changes that we invite in, changes that we want to make, right? And then there's the thing of the reality that sometimes we get changes that we don't ask for.
Yeah.
Sometimes we are given the invitation to be with changes that we would never in a million years want to have in our lives, and yet they're in front of us, right? And so the same guidance would go for that, which would be, how can I make this simple for myself, as easy on myself? And I have 6 tips, I guess, that we can kind of go through.
Okay.
Um, and I'll get to them in a moment, just to kind of summarize what my personal story is, so we can kind of keep it simple for everybody listening. Um, I I'll mention my autism diagnosis because that was so epic in my life, realizing that I have this new framework and this new way of understanding myself and seeing the world. It changed everything. It changed how I saw conversations that I had 35 years ago, right?
Mm,
It changed how I move through the world. It changed the the dynamic that I have with myself and how I can relate to other people, because I now have a language and a framework and an understanding.
yeah.
But it also put into perspective the concept of change for me, right? Like when I was a little kid, if the plans changed for whatever reason, I would completely lose my mind.
Mm,
I mean, I just some of the most mundane, boring, shift in plans, even by like 10 minutes, I would lose it. And, um, driving my sister to school in the morning and going to high school, if she would be running like 2 minutes late, I would have a meltdown in the car. Like these kinds of things, not being able to veer away from the plan. Now, not and I'm much older now, right? And now that I have this framework, this language, this diagnosis, I'm able to see how I had such a rigidity and such a strict way of navigating change, that now that I'm older, I have a little bit more flexibility with that, because I'm understanding now, finally, I'm getting the memo that everything is constantly changing. And I'm softening my grip a little bit more. I'm letting go from holding on to just, okay, I can soften a little bit and be a little bit more compassionate with myself at the same time. you know? So there's changes that we don't ask for. There's changes that we do ask for, and underneath that is the reality that change can just be challenging regardless, right? So the other thing I wanted to mention around that, around weight loss and um, moving and changing careers. I changed careers multiple times. I was a longtime classroom teacher and a curriculum designer, and I really identified with that, with the job title or the thing that I was doing. And when I left the classroom, I had no idea who I was.
Mm,
No concept of who I was because I wrapped myself around an identity.
mm,
And same thing when I lost all that weight. I didn't know who I was without carrying all that extra weight, right?
mm,
I didn't know who I was if I was moving to another town across the country. I didn't know who I was if I didn't have this particular job title, right? And when we wrap ourselves and our sense of self and our identity around that which is inherently going to change, we are going to suffer.
mm,
And so we can then shift from who am I if I'm not, fill in the blank, whatever, if I'm not any number of things. Who am I if I'm none of those things? And that's really where a contemplation practice can come in, a solitude practice can come in, a yoga and meditation practice can come in because we learn to disidentify and distinguish our sense of self with a capital S outside of all those things that are going to change.
So when we do let go of the title of
Mhm.
teacher, the title of thick girl, the title of what is this more of a grounding to be present with how we are being and feeling?
Yes.
Cool.
Feeling and being, right? And so it takes us out of the habitual mindset of thinking, of doing, of achieving, of accomplishing, of attaching, right? To just being.
The
And
results.
yeah, like letting go of the results.
Results. Okay.
Yeah, totally, totally. And it is a lifelong practice.
The
It
reason
is
why
a
I asked
lifelong
that,
practice.
yeah, the reason why I asked that is because I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues, and then because I did some stuff at work, and I messed up doing a project for shipping, and it's my first time doing like a large project that had to deal with like logistics, specifically for coordinating like the sizes into the vehicle. I've never done that before, because all those things would usually be provided to me. Anyways, I was like, "Oh, I need to take a picture of this," and he responds with, "Oh, is it because you messed up on so and so project?" And I was like, "No, I am actually okay with making that mistake because really that's what it is. I cannot be hard on myself for something that I didn't know. And so being more compassionate with myself in the learning process is where I'm at." And he got stuck when I said that to him. He was like, "Oh, I like that."
That will throw people off. Yeah. Yeah. Good on you. That's because it's what you're just sharing, it's demonstrating a sense of humility and vulnerability and acceptance and taking the seat of the student, right? And owning it. And imagine if more of us did that, you know? Because that was not me for much of my life. Like that was not me for much of my life. And sometimes we need to be humbled to be able to have that perspective and to shift our perspective in that way.
Oh, girl, I'm with you
Yeah.
too. That was
Yeah.
that this is the new me. The old me
Yeah.
probably would have been like, it's not my fault. I didn't do it, because this person did that.
Yeah.
No, this
Yeah.
one is this present Fran is present.
And what you're sharing is really getting to this idea, right? It's being able to shape shift identities. Shifting from the identity of I know it all, I have all the answers, not taking accountability, not taking responsibility to, you know what, I don't know. And I'm just I'm learning. And it's again, it could be such a practice, it could be such a skill to really own that,
Yeah,
to own that. Yeah.
yeah. I've even had like conversations with myself recently around the idea of the intention of why I'm doing something. Yes, I'm doing it for the idea of documentation, making sure everything is in a framework. But also, too, the question is, okay, are you creating this framework so you can look good, or are you creating this framework for the collective so everybody can participate? And that's a question I've been asking myself.
Yeah. It's I love asking more questions rather than having answers because I don't know.
Well, could
And
you walk us through that? Because that sounds interesting. I'm curious about that.
yeah, one of my core values as a human being, as a yoga therapist, as a student of life is curiosity
Hmm.
and being able to, again, take a step back, zoom out, and ask, okay, why is this happening? What is my role in this situation?
Hmm.
What is and is not my responsibility? What can I learn from this? What is the lesson here? And so much more can become available to us when we can move through life with a sense of curiosity rather than a sense of absolute knowing.
Hmm.
Because there is a distinction.
Like a
And
God
there's
complex.
exactly, exactly, yeah. But, like, that's out here, right? The sense of what I mean by that, to clarify, is a sense of absolute knowing of, like, I have all the answers that are out here versus an inner knowing,
Hmm.
totally different.
Hmm.
Totally different because an inner knowing is a sense of feeling grounded and a sense of moving through life with a sense of conviction and passion and belief in oneself and connection to something greater than ourselves. There's a big difference. And to me, that really speaks to the concept of living and moving through life with a sense of curiosity and humility. And those two qualities can really help carry us through change, life changes, right? So again, changes that we ask for, changes that we don't ask for. We can take the seat of the student and be curious.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm going to shift a little bit into, what we're experiencing right now here in LA. And then also, you can apply that to however, we're going to navigate this conversation.
Mhm.
Um, so for people experiencing the shift right now, what would be one of the things that they could ask themselves? Because going from a place that they call home and then now being displaced, um, what would be some of the things that they could help to ground themselves?
Mm. What I would say is that there's no easy answer to that,
Okay.
and that I don't have the answers, but I can share some perspectives on this.
Okay.
Um, being in the yoga and wellness space for so many years, I have I've heard so much spiritual bypassing, it's pretty nauseating, you know? love and light and everything works out and everything's fine and oh, it's just stuff, or you'll find a new home, or just anything. Like I've heard so much of this over the years that it's vile, right? And so I want to make sure that I am not including myself as best I can in that mentality.
Yeah.
And what I would say as really my first and foremost mm, idea or tip, I guess, is to really name it, acknowledge this feels hard.
Mm.
This just sucks.
Mm.
And I think oftentimes we tend to skip over that. We skip over the facing the reality of, "Oh my god, this is too big.
Yeah.
This is." And those of us who might be well-meaning and wanting to be supportive and helpful tend to forget that. And we go right to the problem solving and the fixing and the do this and this and this and this, and that's not the reality,
Yeah.
you know? And to really say it out loud. And even I would even say, bringing in some brain science into this, write it down and say, "This feels hard."
Mm. I felt like crying when you said that because it does. It feels hard.
Yeah.
I'm not displaced, but I feel, I just feel a sense of community for our people here. It feels hard.
And I would take it a step further.
Yeah.
This feels impossible,
Yeah. It
you
does
know?
feel impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Rhea. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And and to not shy away when the tears come. Our tears can be our greatest source of wisdom and connection with unspoken wisdom.
Mm.
Yeah. With for that which there are no words. Yeah, and, that's another thing is sometimes there just aren't any words.
Mm. Yeah.
So, the first would say, and this would be, speaking to navigating what's going on currently with the fires, with any sort of, acute traumatic experience
Mm.
or difficult experience, a loss, a shift, an unexpected change, right? This can be applied in so many different areas. So acknowledge that this feels hard, really name it. The
Okay.
second would be lean on your supports.
Mm.
Lean on your supports, and that looks like many different things for different people, but what I would say is something that you just alluded to is your community, right?
Yeah.
So which identify the communities that we belong to, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's a faith group, whether it's a social group, lean on our supports because who are we without it,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So community, another tip, I guess, to lean on your supports would be to reconnect with any daily rituals that you might have
Mm.
or a sense of prayer if you have a prayer practice.
Mm.
If you have a yoga practice, if you have just a contemplation practice, anything that helps keep you grounded. It doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be elaborate, it can just be a moment, right? But it's something that you can come back to that has worked for you in the past to keep you steady.
Mm.
Steady in mind, steady in body, steady in heart,
Mm.
and steady in your breath. Mhm.
So would that be like even a breath, like a breath work practice? Just
Absolutely.
for, yeah, just for somebody that may not have an idea of what a routine or a ritual is. Maybe they're
Absolutely.
doing it and they don't recognize it, and we'll just, you can help them identify that.
Yeah. And it can even be something as simple as brushing your teeth.
Mm.
That's something that you do every day. So try to connect to something that either you do on purpose, right? With a really strong sense of intention and awareness, or something that you're doing anyway during the day that is just on autopilot, and bring a sense of awareness to that, because that can help you stay grounded. It's teaching your nervous system, reminding your nervous system, "Oh, okay, like I'm here. I'm okay." And maybe even just counting when you're brushing your teeth or making your coffee or whatever it would be.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Another yeah, and another tip that I have for leaning on your supports would be embody your values. And by that, I mean really identify, okay, what's important to you? What's important to you in life? What do you what do you value, right? So this could be something like, one of my values would be peace, or let's say I value kindness. Embody that. So really take on that quality, take on that characteristic of peace. So I am going to be peace. I'm going to move through the world with a sense of peace. And whatever that looks like, peace of thought, peace of word, peace of how I move, and then also kindness, right? So how am I showing up with a sense of kindness even when life feels impossible? How am I showing up with kindness toward myself? How am I showing up with kindness toward my neighbor who might need some support or some help?
Mhm.
To really take on that quality that you value, that can be an underutilized, way to lean on our supports.
Mm, mm,
So another tip that I have that speaks to what you just mentioned a moment ago is your breath. We sometimes forget to breathe when we're in the midst of profound difficulty and challenge, and yet we have this inner pharmacy, as I like to say, an inner pharmacy of healing, which is the breath. Yeah, we always have that available
mm,
to us. And
mm,
it is the breath is the fastest way to change our physiological state, our emotional state, our mental state, simply by tapping into something that we have access to 24 hours a day. And we forget that, right? I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I forget it, right? Like it's it's just part of being a human. So like it just we keep coming back to, oh right, I can breathe. Okay. And so the tip here, the recommendation here is when you find yourself mentally spiraling or feeling really unsettled and really ungrounded, is to just pause for a moment. Ground. So feel your feet on the ground, feel your hips in a chair, wherever you might find yourself. Just pause for that moment. And then notice the space between the inhale and the exhale. So you notice the space between the inhale. So take an inhale through the nose. Pause that moment, that space, and then you exhale. There's a space at the bottom. That space is that place where we can pause and remember, "Oh, right. Okay, I'm breathing.
mm.
I'm recognizing I'm breathing in and out." And to take it a step further, you can place your hand on your heart, left hand, and then right hand. You can keep your eyes soft or closed. On an inhale breath, you can silently or out loud say to yourself, "I am." On an exhale breath, say, "Here." Inhale, "I am." Exhale, "Here." I am here. And then just simply allow the breath to feel effortless, almost like you're watching the breath, allowing the body to be breathed, the breath flowing in and out from the center of the heart. with the unshakable awareness that I am here. And when that feels complete, you can flutter the eyes open, reground.
I almost forgot we were doing the podcast.
And that speaks to, wow, okay, that can shift you. That can shift you. There you go. Practice in action. There it is, friends. This
Uh,
this is this is a practice I share with almost every one of my clients, regardless of what they're navigating. You know, as a yoga therapist, I customize practices and I customize programs depending on time of day, what the client needs, what they're working through. So it's a fully custom program.
mhm,
But what I've found through my years of doing this with myself and with other, with clients is we forget to reconnect with the heart and with the breath. And it can apply to this practice can really apply toward so much in life,
yeah.
regardless of what we're dealing with and regardless of the changes that we might be going through.
Mm,
So I have 3 more tips if you wanna keep going.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we pause, we ground, notice the spaces between the inhale and exhale. You can then place your hand on heart and say, I am here. Another another suggestion and another tip that has taken me a very long time to really own and to really accept that this is really the meat of it, because what we want to do is strengthen the discomfort muscle.
Right.
Because when we find ourselves, when life is happening and it's coming at us, we have greater capacity and we have greater resources to draw upon because we've been practicing, right?
Yeah.
So the recommendation I have here is get uncomfortable on purpose.
Oh my God. Girlfriend,
Do
you are
do
all
it
up
on
in my business
purpose.
right now. You're all up in
Do
my
it.
business right now.
Yeah,
Yes.
do it on purpose.
Yeah.
Do it on purpose. And I'm saying this as an autistic woman, and I'm not speaking on behalf of autistic folks, but for me and a lot of people in my community, it is very difficult to navigate change. It is very difficult to get uncomfortable
Mm,
and to do things outside of the norm and outside of the way that we've been doing them. And so if we can do anything to help build our reserve for when life will happen, because friend, life will happen.
mm,
Anything that we can do on the back end is only a service to ourselves and others. And so get uncomfortable on purpose, strengthen the discomfort muscle, do something new and different as often as you possibly can. And it can be really small things like taking a different route to work in the morning,
mhm,
right? Trying, turning right instead of turning left and seeing something different as change your perspective on things. Try a new class,
mm,
take a new exercise class, take a new painting class or something to get outside of the norm that feels a little bit uncomfortable. To maybe get up 10 minutes earlier than you normally would, or 20 or 30 minutes earlier than you normally would.
yeah.
Simple things, right? I mean, I'm not talking about big, grand gestures because I don't find that that necessarily works very well. For some people, it does, but I think it's as simple as we can possibly make it. We're increasing our ability to navigate the big changes. So the
Yeah.
little things really add up.
The habit stacking.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah. Makes sense.
yeah. So that's more of like a maintenance way to approach change, but it's also, to me, I think one of the most important recommendations.
Yeah. I
Like
think it's
the Go ahead.
good. We both said, "Go ahead, Jinx."
Yeah.
No. um, just the idea of it in regards to creating sustainability for that maintenance. Um, doing the brushing the teeth and affirmations at the same time. Don't not feeling like it. Um, but like you said, as you continue to practice this, it is something that you find yourself saying automatically, not needing a reminder.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and there's a lot of science to back that up. There's a lot of, current evidence-based science to show the more that we can do something, it becomes habitual, and that can be to our advantage. It can also be to not to our advantage, right? To our detriment. And so
Mm,
the key here is bringing a sense of awareness, awareness to what we're doing,
yeah.
and awareness and a sense of consciousness to intentionally making ourselves uncomfortable
Mm,
because we want to be the anchor in the storm because then we can be a support for other people.
yeah.
Yeah, and if we don't ground ourselves in that truth and in a sense of steadiness, we're just kind of flailing in the wind,
Yeah.
especially when life happens, as it is happening right now.
Yeah. Is there something that
Yeah.
you can share with us that you experienced, a situation of how you had to face like just something specific, a specific story?
Do you have all day?
Just one. Just
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Yeah, I'm relates to when my grandmother was transitioning.
Mm.
My grandmother was 100, 102 and a half.
Oh.
Yeah. And about a week and a half before she left, I knew. No one else could see it, but energetically, I just knew, because that's just maybe that's a gift of mine, maybe it's I don't know what it is, but I was just very aware. And so she started to um, decline very, very quickly. Um, and I was really the anchor for, I'll just say, for my family to be able to say, this is happening.
Mm,
We need to be here for her, find a steadiness within ourselves,
mhm,
speak a little bit more slowly, a little bit more calmly, a little bit more grounded so that the energy that is filling the room is supportive to enable her to be able to transition with more ease and more peace and more grace. Being with her, in her final days and sitting with her and helping to guide her was the most heartbreaking experience of my life,
mm,
aside from being there with my dog, but that's another conversation. Um, it was the most heartbreaking, but it was also the most beautiful
mm,
because I was able to connect to all my years of practicing staying grounded and staying steady and getting uncomfortable so that I can be that anchor for my entire family and for myself and most of all for my grandmother.
mm,
I didn't make it about me. It was not about how painful and how just gut-wrenching the experience was. It was, this I am showing up for my grandmother right now, and, um, I don't think I would have been able to be that presence if I hadn't been, let's just say, practicing
yeah.
being being the anchor that I needed. Yeah.
How did that thank you for sharing your story about your grandma
Mhm.
and being in that space. Can't imagine the energies that were occurring at the same time. How did that creating that space for your family, how did that shift the dynamic amongst all of you?
Well, that's a big question. Yeah, I can only speak to my perspective. I can't necessarily speak on, on behalf of anybody else, but what I can say is I did get the sense that they appreciated
Mm.
that I was the steady hand. I was, let's just say, the voice of reason.
Mm,
Um, and I think perhaps saw me in a different light, that I'm not the headless chicken running around, right? I'm not freaking out and, "Oh my god." Yeah, it was, "This is happening. Like, this is not about me. This is being the loving and gentle and guiding presence for my grandmother who is being ushered into the next realm," you know?
mm,
Um, and it was definitely one of the most spiritual experiences of my life, and there's a lot more I can share about that, maybe another time, but it was, yeah, the more that we show up for ourselves,
yeah.
the more that we have greater capacity to be able to show up for others, you
Girl,
know?
that's a great way to end the podcast
Mm,
because it is our capacity. It is our capacity to show up for ourselves. It is our capacity to love others is to love ourselves. It is our capacity to be kind that we can be kind to others. It is a capacity um, that has to take within ourselves in order for us to extend that to others. And it sounds like you had created that space for your family. You brought them into your lifestyle at that moment to see that this is a living practice,
yeah,
not one that's spoken, like you said earlier.
yeah.
Actions, our actions are speaking what the words can't.
Yeah, and that speaks to the core of yoga. It's not about what you do on a mat. It's not about kicking your foot over your head. It's not it that that's not it. How
Mm,
are we showing up in our daily lives? How are we embodying our values so that when life happens, as it will, as it is, as it's going to, how do we navigate changes,
mm,
difficult changes, impossible life changes, right? With the inner resources that we have available to us.
yeah. Well, since we are about to end the podcast, please let the people know where they could find you, so that they can get the guidance and a piece of this lifestyle that you live to help them ground themselves.
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so it's just my first and last name at LinkedIn, and my website, briannegoldman.com. So I
Awesome.
offer meditation classes, yoga nidra, guided visualizations, and personalized custom plans.
Yes. If you guys were not watching the whole podcast, we basically did some of the stuff that she teaches. So you're bad for not being here. But the great thing is there's replay.
Very
so
true.
so Brianne, what's just one last piece of advice that you would leave folks before we call it a day?
Mm. When you prioritize your own well-being, you are offering the greatest service to your fellow humans.
Mm. Well, yep, can't add anything to that. I can, but I won't. I appreciate you being with us and always being present, and you are always welcome back. Thank you so much just for offering your wisdom.
Thank you. It is a humble honor. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, everybody. Enjoy your Saturday and be present. Clicking end.